Recorded on November 21st, 2012 in front of a live internet audience. This week's Design Chat is brought to you by Typecast app. Create better web typography with less hassle. Quickly style type in the browser and check for readability, rendering, and beauty as you work. Go to typecast.com to find out more.
Hello and welcome to Design Chat, the best live design discussion on the internet. I'm your host, Ryan McGovern. On Twitter, I'm at Hoopajube and at Design Chat. Every week, we get together with some of the coolest people from the design community and chat. This week, we are talking to Mr. Jason Pamental. Welcome, Jason.
Hello, hello.
Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to meet you. Again, our patron saint of Design Chat, Mitch Goldstein, had recommended you to come and hang out with us. Yes, patron saint, Mitch, that is your new formal title here at Design Chat. You have been instrumental in the last month and a half, 2 months of bringing in special and interesting people. So we are very excited to be talking to Mr. Pamental tonight. So first thing we always do, Design Chat tradition, we have the guests sort of introduce themselves for people who are not familiar. Tell them a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Well, my name's Jason Pamental. I've been, should I just state my entire career in pre and post Mitch years? I think maybe that's actually that should be the new standard with anybody.
We'll all get comfortable.
All right. Well, I've been working on the web since about 1994. When I was in school at Rhode Island College. This was pre-Mitch years, but probably not too far.
This was pre-web years.
Well, the first website job that I had was building Rhode Island College's first site where I was going to school, and I was testing in Mosaic and Netscape 1. So it's about as far back as you could go. We young cranky little whippersnappers, we didn't even have table tags back then to complain about. So that's my geek web cred. I was around before the blink tag. How about that? But
that's
it all
style.
It's always been a blend of design and tech. I mean, it's been that way since I started studying graphic design and learning HTML, to building my first CMS in 1997, and then having sort of various roles as either creative director or oh, that's scary. Let's see if this was actually the right link that you put up there. I will tell you in a second. We'll come back to that. But so it's sort of grown in scale and size. I've done .NET development. I've done creative direction on an NFL site, and then at one point started a company with Mitch and two other good friends. We made some really cool stuff, and then it was not to be as a business. Mitch went on to go to RISD and do his thing, and he's really kind of taken off in his direction. One of the other guys is a web administrator for a city in Arizona. Another guy is a marketing manager for running programs at Puma. And I've kind of bounced in and out of a couple other companies, and have more recently started doing a lot of speaking and writing about design, web design, and web typography is kind of a passion. I'm actually working on a book for O'Reilly on web typography, which I'm woefully behind on finishing. And recently was working at a company called Schoolyard, building a Drupal-based platform for independent school websites. So I was providing creative direction and then building the whole platform as well. I really got into doing responsive web design there. So I've been doing responsive web design for almost a year and a half on all the sites that we do there. And so for anybody that actually hasn't heard of that, it's just websites that will sort of scale nicely from a phone to a tablet to a full desktop without having to sacrifice content or build a wholly separate site. And I've been doing a lot more of that. I've been teaching that and providing a lot of help to other companies in sort of how to bring a responsive workflow their own department. And I left Schoolyard to go back and do this stuff on my own. So I like the blend. I like being able to take design and tech and make those things work together better than I think most people can. There's not enough people that really know design and technology well enough. So I try and teach that. I try and sort of steer people in that direction and try and help push the web forward in my own little way. So that's what I'm up to.
Holy crap, Jason. And you mentioned that you are currently on the board of directors for the Rhode Island AIGA chapter.
Yes, the AIGA peeps.
A good crowd to be part of. So I say holy crap because of the wide net you just cast. Art direction on an NFL site to creating your own CMS. Here's the thing, if you don't know, if you haven't participated in either of those functions in one capacity or another, you don't know how vastly different they are and how difficult each task is on its own. I'm sure it's hard to explain to people who just aren't aware. But I would imagine in a lot of the jobs that you take on, the people who are looking for that kind of work know who they're looking for and know why they need to hire you.
I have not historically had too much trouble finding work. I will say that. What's curious to me, and actually, Mitch and I were talking about that this morning. It's great. He's up visiting his dad in Rhode Island here, so we got to get together for breakfast. I live right outside Providence, so it's kind of nice to be able to catch up a bit. But it's something that still kind of stumps me that we don't teach people how to deal with both sides of their brain that way in the web, and we don't really quite have a way of handling that. So I can always get work. I can't always find the really meaningful work that I want to do, because Jen Robbins once described this sort of person that does a lot of design and technology really well as a unicorn, and while I'm not really sure I want to call myself that, it's equally hard to find employment opportunities for them. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of weird. I mean, we need to fix it. It's kind of broken in the web industry that way.
See, I don't know if I would describe it as broken. I would describe there are few professionals out there that have the bandwidth to mentally take on the study of both areas. Because if you're a young person and you're choosing a career path, maybe that's the part that's broken. It is at that moment where you choose the career path and how they teach it. We've got design, right, and that's very much in the arts schools, and then we've got information technology, right, and computer programming and all this kind of stuff, which definitely splits down into the sciences and maths, and they're taught by very different types of people, and it isn't until, I would argue, after the sort of collegiate experience that people who are interested in both choose to participate in both and build up their skill levels in both activities, because they are so completely different, like you described, parts of the brain.
That's partly true, but I'm also going to fall back on what I was told by Mitch this morning, that I can be a little bit freer with my expression and call bullshit.
Okay.
Absolutely 100%. I don't buy it, because I think the educational system for design is just fundamentally flawed, and part of the reason is that all the people that are teaching it grew up with print, so there's an inherent bias there.
Yep.
Every time you have to bring something in and show it to the professor, you've printed it in 4 colors.
Yep.
So I mean, it's almost impossible to escape. But But to my mind, if you're going through and learning design, you need to learn how to do two things to be a good designer. The work that you make has to communicate ideas, and it has to influence behavior. Any piece of design has to do those two things. Whether it's on the web, whether it's on a phone, or it's a business card, they've all got to do the same thing. So they've got to get a piece of information across and hopefully get you to act on it. And so, I think that we need to teach more about interaction, and we need to teach more about both ways that you need to apply design, because the principles and the ideas may be the same. If you're doing branding work for a company, you have to be able to execute that brand across a whole myriad of platforms. Whether it's print or pixels, it doesn't matter. So to me, I think a good design education has to include HTML and CSS. Maybe not complete mastery, but you've got to at least know how it works, the same way you need to know how a printing press works.
Well, you bring up a good point in that the types of people who are currently at the colleges and universities right now teaching design are of a very specific type of background. Their experiences have been defined by ink and paper. Some of which, and now that is a complete generalization. I'm not saying that everyone who's teaching design right now is very old school and traditional, because there are definitely those teachers and professors who have reached out and retrained themselves to navigate through our modern era. But what I'm saying is, you bring up an interesting and valid point that this could be, as a whole, a generational issue. And the next wave of teachers and educators who come in are going to have brought with them these new and different types of digital experiences.
I'm not sure how well it's going to work or how long it's going to take, and this is why. I will never be able to teach full-time at a college level, because I was studying design. I got basically all the way through the program, and then I kept getting offered jobs. And one of those jobs was to go up to Boston and be the creative director for a team, and hire a bunch of designers to create the website for the New England Patriots. And then after that, it was to create a website for Tiger Woods, which actually used to be a cool thing to brag about. And so what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and take a lab science, or am I going to take this amazing job that takes me to London and New York and Florida and all over the place to work on these huge, incredible projects? That's the choice that I have to make. So I've taught a couple of classes in college. I taught one design class back at Rhode Island College, but I can never teach full-time because I don't have a master's. And the likelihood that anybody else in my shoes is going to go back and do that is very, very remote. So until schools change their requirements and say, in order to adapt and be able to teach a technology, not just a technology, but a whole way of communicating that's changing so rapidly, your curriculum has to change and your requirements for teaching has to change. And that's really hard. I mean, that's super hard to get schools to give that up, because they live and die by accreditation, and accreditation has to have some kind of standard, so they teach stuff that doesn't matter. I mean, that's really what it comes down. It's not that it doesn't matter, but it only teaches half of what people really need to know. So generational or not, Mitch is a fabulous designer, and so is Anne, his partner, but their choice was to actually stick primarily in a print world, and they're going to teach there, and that's fine. People still need to do that. There will always be ink on paper. I mean, the thing that I sent you for my own work was a letterpress printed poster. I love it. I love the feel of it. I love the experience of making it and designing it. But that's only part of our world as a designer. And I may be more of an extreme case in how far I've gone into the technology side of things. But I think to be an effective designer and communicate and influence people and do the work that is increasingly asked of designers, most web designers are self-taught. and Mitch is putting it right in the chat window there. Schools are chasing technology, and unfortunately, most of the time, I think they're chasing applications rather than the problems those applications are trying to solve. So they'll teach Dreamweaver, they won't teach HTML. And
Where's
so
tip
it's
point?
a challenge.
Where it's where students, incoming freshmen, are evaluating whether they will get more value out of being at a university and learning about design or technology, or pursuing an online degree through an online school, or teaching it to themselves.
Well, I think what you've seen so far in all of the... Wow, that was weird. What just happened? Okay, that was kind of strange. Monitor just went black for a second. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. I think, you know, probably 90% or more of the people that are designing the web today are self-taught. They may or may not have a degree.
90%.
I think many.
You believe it's a full 90%?
Yep, I do. Because I would be hard-pressed to find... I mean, you may learn a bit about design in school, but you're not going to learn about web design in school. And that's very, very different. So the people that are doing it today and changing the web and actually coming up with all of this stuff that we're reading about and trying to emulate, they're curious. I mean, this is an industry driven by curiosity. We have responsive design because Ethan Marcotte was curious. You know, we have Twitter because people were curious. We have Ruby on Rails because people had an itch that they wanted to scratch. You know, all of these things have come about as small projects, small groups of people trying to solve a problem and just figuring it out as they go.
Samantha Warren's design tiles.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to remind the audience real quick that you can ask questions. There's a red Ask a Question button on the right side of the screen, and you can enter it in via text, or if you have a camera, you can get on camera with us. So I highly encourage you to follow, like Andrew said, in Mitch Goldstein's steps, and click on that button. Usually we wait a little while, but I like making it, I called it design tiles. It's called style tiles. Sorry, there's the link at the bottom there. I think we should just jump in and start taking questions now, especially because Mitch creates such great dialogue. What is the correlation between old Porsches and web design / development?
It's an inverse proportion of computer relationship. I have a very old car, and the reason I love it so much is it has no computers, and everything about it is mechanical. So when I go and work on that and go drive it, it is my analog experience, and it is my sanity. That's why I studied graphic design and printmaking. There's not really a whole lot of tech in like etching things in copper with acid.
It's physical and real, and you can touch it and change it at your own will based on the properties of the materials you're given. The
most fascinating thing when I got my first 912, which is a 60s Porsche that looks like a 911, but it has a 4-cylinder engine, so it's easier to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done most of the work. I've had 2 of them now, and I do all the work myself as much as possible. There's only really one job that I've ever had to actually have somebody else do. And I love working on them. I mean, the fuel pump is like 6 parts, and it works as long as the engine is turning. So I mean, it's just anything on the car. If you take it apart, clean it, and put it back together, it works better. And I love that because I can never do that with a computer. You know, you can throw them away. You design a website and somebody kicks the plug and your work disappears. So it's a very different thing. It's very satisfying.
Is there a way that web design and interactive design could be more mechanical and benefit from it?
Well, you know, it's not the mechanical thing about it so much as the craft. And you know, a lot of people like to toss that word around, and I think most of the time it doesn't mean much. But craft is really important, and it's just being dedicated to doing your own work to the best of your capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so many things that we could do on the web, we take so many shortcuts because we're rushed, because there's no budget, because I had spent too much time figuring out this one challenge over here, so I don't have time to finesse this thing over there. I'm guilty of it. I think almost everybody's guilty of it. I think um, Elliot J. Stocks is not guilty of that. Elliot J. Stocks does things beautifully, and I admire him. Mike Coos does things beautifully. Jason Santamaria does that. I mean, there are this this small handful of people who will never do anything without doing it to the absolute best it possibly can be, and that's craft, and that's for me why I actually use tools like Drupal. Drupal is the underlying stuff to drive most of the websites that I build, so I don't have to build that stuff. I can spend my time finessing the type. Because I think that we can use good fonts. We can set our type well. When I redesigned my own blog, it's always a work in progress. The only thing that I did on it, really, I actually removed all the work. I just left the typography, and I left the articles, because that was really the more important thing that for me that to get across was the stuff that I was writing was, I think, better than the work that I had been doing previously. So I'll get back up there and put more work up, but I chose a nice typeface and I used it carefully, and I want to just do the stuff that I can do as well as it should be, and do that, and then move on to the next piece. So that's kind of what my goal in coming back to working for myself was to spend more time on that craft and really get to know it and teach it more.
Earlier you mentioned that in 1997, you designed your first CMS. For those not aware, CMS is a content management system.
Yeah.
Did that term even exist in 1997?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it did. I think it was maybe, I think it might have been 96 or early 97 that Microsoft released ASP, or Active Server Pages, and that was their way of connecting web pages to databases, so that you could design a template and have any number of pages stored in that database. So, until then, and even for years after, those of us who were making websites were making static HTML pages for every page on the site. So each one was a separate document. And when you needed to make a menu change, you had to search and replace across, potentially hundreds or thousands of documents to make it happen. And that revolution of being able to put a database behind it and then have templates was amazing. And there were ways to do it at that point, but it was still really, really hard. In 97, I was working for myself, still taking a few classes at Rhode Island College, and I was asked by the Providence Business News, a local business paper in Providence, obviously, to help finish up their website. And it had been started by a company in Rhode Island using this platform called Tango that was originally a Mac product to connect Mac websites to a Butler database, which no one I'm listening to, I'm sure, will ever have heard about.
Hey, we're losing your audio a little bit. Maybe speak up a little hint.
Sure. This better?
Yep.
Great. So I was using this product Tango to finish their website, and so it was a part of it was server software, part of it was a program that I worked in as the developer, and it was sort of these little tags that you would put in, and those tags would then be interpreted to to do all their stuff, to connect to the database and pull out news articles and do all this stuff. And so I kind of just figured it out. They had most of it designed to work with. They had some of the database stuff set up. And so I had, he gave me a couple of days and paid for me to figure it out. And so I went through the manual, I did all the tutorials, and I really just made sense to me. I think it's why I've learned every piece of technology on the web that I've ever learned, is because I either couldn't find a developer to do it the way I wanted, or I didn't have the patience, and I just wanted to do it. And this suited me well, and I ended up using that platform for a long time to build websites for North Sales, the sailmaking company. I built stuff for 2 America's Cup syndicates with it, and then it actually became the basis for a lot of the work that we did at Bathysphere, which is the company that Mitch started with me back around 2001, and that was a great product. It kind of outlived its usefulness to try and get really fully developed as a content management system with all of the modules and plugins and finesse. It was more of building blocks to make something like that. So that was, it's better to end up going with a product that was already sort of fully baked rather than continue to try and make my own.
I want to hear more about this web typography book that you seem to be, remorseful about not being further on. But I mean, that could be said about any project. But sure. I think I want to bring up the subject because I'm sure I share. Ooh, there we go.
So I have lots of pages written. I just need to write more.
I'm sure I share a frustration with a lot of other professionally trained designers and typesetters, that the skills that we use for our print and maybe Photoshop images that end up on the web are not easily transferred to creating actual scannable text on the web or other interactive experiences. There are tools out there. A lot of us know about them, all the JavaScript stuff that's been going on that allows you to style your text on a web or interactive experience, but they are, unless you're really willing to completely dive into the programming world, you're not going to be able to navigate through that. So I'm curious about where what viewpoint is your book coming from? Is it about how it's going to be? Is it about how to do it? Is it about what it should be?
Yes. So the simplest answer is that it's actually way easier than you think. It's
I almost
shocking.
spit my drink at my keyboard here and sacrifice my MacBook Pro because I find that hard to believe, Mr. Pamental.
Okay, can you go to either fonts.com or typekit.com, sign up for a free account, pick your fonts, copy one line of JavaScript, one line, paste that into the header of your page. You can even add all your selectors through their system and say, I want my H1s in Bodoni and I want my body copy in Garamond Premiere Pro, if that's how you roll, and save that, put that line of JavaScript to include it in your Font Squirrel. Get that out of there. That is a crap website. All right, I'll explain why. I'll explain that comment in a minute. But really, all it takes is adding that one line. There's no other coding to do whatsoever, and that is the biggest problem that font vendors face today, is lack of awareness in the broader design community.
I guess I'm talking about more than that. I'm talking about kerning, leading.
That's all CSS. You don't need JavaScript for that. you have letter spacing, you have line height, and those are just basic properties of CSS.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's more there than a lot of people realize, and that, I mean, it's that whole thing about, you know, the best trick the devil ever pulled was convincing everybody he didn't exist. It's the inverse problem that font vendors have about web typography, and actually I've done a lot of work with Monotype trying to help them break into the open source community. I've done some work developing the UI for the font module for Drupal, and that UI was copied over to WordPress and Joomla, I think, as well. But the problem is the design community doesn't know how much they can do. There's no excuse for Arial anymore. There just isn't. And that's my mission in life, to eradicate it from its use on the web, because it sucks. It's a crappy typeface. And so, you know, you've got the ability to add any one of 30 or 40 or 50,000 fonts. Fonts.com is great. Typekit is great. Google Web Fonts is a good gateway drug for you. But the problem is they have a lot of open fonts that are very uneven in their quality. And one of the things about web fonts that's so tricky is that in order to get a quality experience across all platforms and browsers, it needs to have a lot of hinting done. And hinting is the term that's used to make things look good at this sort of sub-pixel level of drawing between two squares that is particular to Windows. And what you'll see with the fonts on Google is a lot of them don't have that extra work done. And that's why I'm a big believer in using professionally made fonts, because the cost is just, it's too low. It's like $100 a year to have an account to serve 30 or 40, 50 websites as a small shop or designer. I mean, like, the money's almost invisible at that point. Yeah, Mitch, fuck you. Sorry, just slipped out.
That's fine. Well, hold on. Let me back out one step. One step backwards is the two different experiences of laying out type on, you know, in our normal Adobe programs that the majority of us use, and laying out type and understanding type for the web are, you know, in our Adobe programs that we all know and love and hate so much, we get a dialog box, right? Start the type here, cursor over, the T and the R aren't close enough, I want to smash it, okay, and you get to smash it. The experience when you want to make those sorts of moves through CSS are, I'm looking at the output and I'm looking at a page of code, right? And so in order to make the jump, if all I know or ever heard of has been these Adobe programs, think about that moment where that idea starts in your head, I want to be able to do it this other way. They look at that page of code and it looks like, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Gibberish?
Yeah, it's just gibberish. To be able to say, I'm going to learn enough about that gibberish to be able to tighten that T and R, that is a monumental jump for a lot of people to be able to change modes like that. So for you who's been dealing in it, you know, since its inception, it's why don't you people just do this thing, right? Because you natively speak this language, right? But I think that there's a huge mental jump for learning a new language as an adult who's already believed to establish themselves in this one skill, and go relearn how to talk about something that they think they should already be able to do.
Well, to steal a quote from Jeffrey Zeldman, real designers code. And by when I say code, I don't mean build your CMS. I mean learn the basics about HTML and CSS, so that gibberish is something that's approachable, and it's not that hard. And I would say that as a designer, when I say varnish, what do you say? You say, oh, that's nice, I wish I had the budget for that. You know, the same thing about die cuts, and the same thing about vellum or whatever. And you know, those are all the tricks and terms in the trade of print design. And as Mitch said, it's the tools that you've got to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So learning the basics of HTML and being able to look at something like this and understand that that means in the chat window, for my level 1 heading, the biggest heading on the page, I would like to bring my letter spacing in 2 pixels. That's all that is. And if you feel like the letter spacing is too loose, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on this. I think browsers tend to set type too loose all the time. It always seems a little bit kind of janky and too open and uneven. I find oftentimes just bringing things in a pixel just across the board, to me, gives a better color. I just think it looks nicer. So letter spacing is kerning. That's what we're talking about. And
well, there's your tracking and your kerning. Letter spacing, when you say overall, I want things in 2 pixels, are you saying that applies to the whole body of text or just in between 2 characters?
That is going. There are some more advanced CSS things that you could do to adjust things between particular letters, but that actually requires a bunch more markup. Letter spacing, and this is where the terminology gets off between classical typography and the web. Letter spacing minus 2 pixels, in this case, and what I put in there, would apply to the entire H1. So whatever is marked up, if we look at this window where that we're all looking at right now, let's say that the words text chat was surrounded by this HTML tag of H1. It would apply to everything that is from the opening H1 tag to the closing H1, and anything in between. It would bring. I guess it's more like tracking than it is kerning. I guess is really more appropriate.
Right. And if the looking at the whole page of gobbledygook is very daunting, but when you're able to break it down into this thing means that, this part applies to this, and you can break it down, right? Then you break it down into smaller chunks. That's the learning process. And one has to be completely willing to delve into the learning process, become a student again, and learn a new language.
And there's actually tools built into every browser now to help you with that. So Firefox, Chrome, Safari.
Everywhere to learn that.
Sure, but it's actually built right into the browser. You don't even have to go and get one. So, I mean, anybody who's got a web browser can click on something, on some element on the page, like they hold their mouse down and right-click on it. Well, you can't do it in this because it's a big old Flash app. But in any other web page, you can right-click on some element and say Inspect Element. That's usually the label they use. And it will then open up this little window that shows you the HTML. And actually, no. In Chrome, you do have to turn the developer tools on. But in Firefox, I think it's on automatically. I may be wrong. But then it's going to give you a window that shows you the HTML and the CSS that applies to it. So you can click on one element, it will highlight it on the screen above and show you the CSS that's applying to it. And you can actually edit the CSS right there and see if it gives you the effect that you want. So for playing with letter spacing, that's perfect. So you can actually see the text reflow on the page by typing a value in there. And then if you get it right, then you go back to your original CSS document and add your change back there, and there you go. And then just republish that page and it's done. But you're right. It is a lifelong commitment to learning. It happens to be one that I enjoy, and it keeps me inspired. That's if a day goes by that I didn't learn something new, I kind of feel like I missed out. And that's me. But I think that's also most other people that work on the web every day who are serious and passionate about it.
Does Adobe have a monopoly on design?
No. I do like some of their products, and I will say that the preview that I've seen of Adobe Reflow, I've actually seen it in action. The guy who's actually responsible for it coming to life was also speaking at a conference in Richmond back in September, and I got to sit down with him for about an hour and actually look at it. Um, it's it's really, I think, going to be a pretty amazing tool to allow people to understand and create a responsive design in a tool that's actually built in HTML5 and CSS3. So the likelihood is the code that would end up producing would actually be something useful rather than what you would typically get out of a program like Dreamweaver that allows so much drag and drop that it's just not going to be really functioning.
So a reflow is an extension of what their project was named before called Edge, correct?
Well, Edge is actually now, I think, a line of products. I think they've changed the naming. Edge Reflow. There's another one called Edge Inspect, I think, which used to be called Shadow. That's the one that allows you to have a page open on your desktop and then also have it open in sync on your connected tablets, phones, whatever, and then you make a change in one and it refreshes the change across all of them. It's a pretty spiffy little app. And then there's also a code editor that they're working on that I've downloaded but I haven't tried because I like Coda. Coda is a nice app, and I'd rather support that. But designing in the browser is becoming a reality, and that is the kind of thing that when you're building a responsive design and you try out style tiles, the need to stay in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign starts to disappear. And it's rare that I would ever do more than one or two mock-ups in a program like that before I actually went straight into the browser and started working on something that actually reflows and scales and because your type never renders the same. I mean, like that's a huge problem. All the plugins that like Extensis has and Adobe has for using and Monotype has come out with one to use web fonts in Photoshop. It doesn't matter because you're still using Photoshop's type rendering engine, not a browser rendering engine, so they never look the same.
Mm-hmm.
I had posted a link in there to something called Typecast app. That's an awesome little web app that actually just recently got acquired by Monotype that allows you to pick a bunch of web fonts and actually work on your styles in a browser and then export the CSS when you're done. So you could actually do a lot of the stuff that you were talking about with visual tools in a web browser to adjust, put a bunch of your copy in and set your headings, set your colors, set your typefaces, work on your letter spacing and line height and all that stuff, get the rhythm that you want, and then export all that CSS and just take it into your project. It's really, really slick, and they've been doing a great job developing it.
Andrew in the chat room is ribbing me. Ryan's always hyped about tools that do that, and it's true because I'm one of those people that has had difficulty in making that leap. I guess it's one of those things where there's enough chaos in the rest of my life that I haven't been able to filter out and commit to that one new exercise of learning. And I share your viewpoint. If a day goes by that I haven't learned something, I feel like I've missed out. And I think I believe that task to be too daunting for me to commit to at this point. The way my career is kind of going in life and family and all this good stuff. And I would imagine there's a lot of people out there who are in my same exact boat.
There are, but I have something for you to try. And this has been something that I've absolutely loved, and I think more people need to do something like it. For the past 2 or 3 years, I've been doing a web design book club with a guy that I started doing work with, and became a very good friend of mine. His name's Steve Cross, and we first did this with Designing with Web Standards, and we would read a chapter or two and then do a 1-hour phone call 1 day a week. And we started out just doing it with some of his employees, and then we fired it up again, and we sort of opened up the circle, and we usually have about a dozen people or so scattered around the eastern half of the country and Canada. that every Wednesday at 8 a.m. we have a go-to meeting, and we talk about a chapter of the book. And you had said something about how often people accept when you've asked them to be on this show, and I think that's awesome, and I think it's actually something, excuse me, that is, I think, just very true across the board in this industry, that the people who are in it and are driving it are incredibly generous people.
Yep.
And so, we've read Designing with Web Standards, we've read Responsive Web Design, Adaptive Web Design, Designing for Mobile, Designing with Emotion, Content Strategy, and all of those authors have come on our show. I mean, it's not a show, it's, yeah, there we go. And that was some quick Googling. And so, we have like 14, 15 people sometimes, but we've had Ethan Marcotte on twice. Aaron Gustafsson has been on. Aaron Kassane was on recently. Luke Wroblewski, Aaron Walter. So we've had like amazing people. Steve Krug was on, and the guy that wrote "Don't Make Me Think." So I was like, they're kind of like one of the first really sort of transformative web usability books. Steve tweeted about it, about reading his book. We never even reached out to him, and within about a half an hour, he had tweeted Steve, offering to be on our club, and was on with us for like over an hour.
That's awesome.
He's just an amazingly good guy.
Is there a back catalog of those discussions that can be experienced somewhere?
We've tried recording them, and we've had a lot of trouble with the audio, and we'll have to talk to you more about that to see if maybe we can do a better job, because I think it would be awesome. So 1 hour a week is my time, whether I've read this book before or not, whether I know this material or not. I'm talking about it with a bunch of people, and I always learn something. Always. And so, like, that 1 hour is sacred to me. I mean, I almost never. I'll miss it once every 6 months, maybe. That's my challenge for people.
If people want to follow along with the items that they should be reading, and then to be able to listen to or participate in that chat or video, where should they go?
They should get in touch with me, through Twitter or anything else. It's GoToMeeting, so we can't have like an unlimited number of people join. But we have new people come in all the time, and some people drift out. So we always kind of keep a running list of people who are interested. And I would really like to find some way for us to do a better job of capturing them and then making it available as a download or podcast or something like that. But like you said, it's you only have so much time in a week to do stuff. But it's that's been my commitment to learning.
Yep.
is to do that, and it's teaching and sharing as well.
We've got another question in here that may be, I can't remember if that's what you were calling it, but when is the next responsive boot camp? James Minier wants to know.
We're talking to a couple of different hotels to look for dates in March. So the story with that is, we read Ethan's book. We have collectively, the people involved in this book club have built probably over 60 different responsive websites in the past year and a half. And so several of us, Steve, myself, John Picozzi, and Kathy Beck from Rubik Design in Newport got together and decided that we wanted to put on a boot camp to teach this stuff. And so it's a one-day workshop, and we got a couple of good friends, Jared Ponchot, who's the creative director at Lullabot, and Jesse Friedman, who's actually got a book launch party next week for a book he just wrote on designing for WordPress. So search for that, Jesse Friedman WordPress on Amazon. It's a great book, and he's an amazing guy. So hopefully somebody's going to find that link and put it up there, because I'm not together enough to do that. the idea there was to do this one-day workshop, really intensive, actually teach people how to do stuff, and give them lots of sample code and lots of things to act on. And it was hugely successful. We sold out. We had 52 people come for a day, and we taught them stuff, and they left with things they could actually act on. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience. I've never talked for so long ever. I taught about 5 hours that day and loved every second of it. I would do it all over again. And I will, actually. We've been asked by a couple companies to do it in-house, and we're doing more. And we've been really committed to keeping the price down because we want to have freelancers and students be able to do it. So that's why, you know, we're going to do our best to keep it under $200 always.
I was just having the thought as you were going through that last explanation. When I go back and I edit the show and I publish it, I think usually I only have to watch it again once, but I think I'm going to watch it again twice, taking notes and thinking about how I position myself to be able to learn what I want to learn, because the format in which you described, read a chapter, get on the phone and talk to somebody about it for an hour every week makes so much freaking sense, because I know in my learning patterns, I can read something and retain it for about 15 minutes. But if I don't expand on that, apply it, compare notes with someone, regurgitate it in whether it's writing it through a pen or attempt it through whatever means necessary, I won't retain it and I won't take that next step. I think it's very important in the learning process after you absorb the information the first time to be able to play and experiment and and actually apply. It's a big step for me. So after we close out the chat, I definitely want to talk to you more about how you're doing that and maybe ways to bring in more people and make it really effective, because when you see people like you who have this amazing knowledge base about an emerging subject that so many people want, it's going to make a lot of other people very desirable and hireable, just like you've experienced for the majority of your career.
That's my mission with this. I mean, 100%. I've been fortunate enough to attend and more recently to speak at a bunch of web conferences, and I was really excited. I actually had three talks accepted last week at different conferences as far away as Sydney. So I'm hoping I'll actually be going to Sydney in February to talk about design and Drupal.
Neat.
But yeah, that's kind of a long shot. That's an expensive trip, but I was asked, so that was good.
Sure.
But I want people. I understand this material better when I teach it. And I think a lot of people do that, and I think that's why a lot of people like to teach, because it helps them learn things better. And so that, it's so low tech and so easy. We've done it with Skype, which is totally free. We're using GoToMeeting. A lot of people have an account for that anyway. And you can support video. You can do all kinds of stuff. And so that low bar to get 5 people that to go buy a book and start talking about it, and then just let it grow. Whether it's joining ours or starting your own. I mean, it amazes me that every time at every conference I'm at, whenever I'm talking to people about this, I talk about this book club all the time, and I've never met anybody else that's doing one. And all it takes, is you spend $20 on a book every 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And this forces you to read it and learn stuff and then talk about it. And then most of the time we get the author to come on and talk to us. It's amazing. So if anybody knows Jonathan Snook, I just sent him an email today because we're reading his book now, and it's amazing. And that I'm really hopeful that he's going to be on, because his book, Scalable and Modular Architecture for CSS, that's actually one of those sort of mind-altering books for me right now. That's really kind of helping shape the way I structure a lot of the code that I'm doing for responsive design to help it scale better and be more reusable. That's the art in CSS to me. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think there's so much you can do in the creative use and reuse of code that you know, there's as much design school needed for that and that kind of thinking as any kind of design work.
Jason, you've given me so much to freaking think about. It's ridiculous. I'm glancing down at my notes. There's a ton of other things that you've accomplished, and this is what I like to do a lot. You know, with other guests, is I look at you know, a number of things they've done, and I come up with questions based on, you know, where their career has taken them so far. But I feel that it's been fun in this chat to talk about where all of this stuff is going. It sounds like we're talking about, you know, learning the skills we need to be able to do the jobs we need to do in the future, right? And it's just very exciting to me. I don't really have a question. I'm not really going anywhere with it, but because we're running to the end of our hour, it's already 9 o'clock. If anybody has a question, get it in right now. We're about to wrap it up and say thank you to Jason. Next week, I want to let everybody know. I'll bring that up and then talk about it in a second. DesignChat/upcoming. We are talking to Brendan Shanley of Lost in Print. They've got a great fundraiser going right now. They also do Lost in Concert, where they're making a book. If you haven't seen it, Lost in Print is a group of people, photographers, who go around to, Lost in Concert. They go around to all these live shows, and they're professional photographers, and they're amassing this great amount of live music photography, and they want to turn it into an actual print book, and they're raising money to do so. So we'll be talking to Brendan next week, formally on the board of AIGA Chicago. Very cool guy, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm not seeing any text questions popping up here, so we're going to wrap it up. Jason, I want to thank you for spending the hour with us and dropping an A-bomb of knowledge on us. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. I'd do it again in a second. That was really a lot of fun. Thanks. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, man. Cheers to everybody who's watching. Tweet about Design Chat with a hashtag DesignChat if you can. Tell all your friends. More announcements to come. We're going to be shaking things up in the near future. So, yeah, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Enjoy. New hashtag, a bomb of knowledge. I love it. A bomb of knowledge. Mitch, again, the patron saint of Design Chat. There needs to be an illustration of Mitch as the patron saint, kind of doing one of those.
Yeah, tell him it's got to be a 5-line self-portrait.
There you go. He bows. He says, "My pleasure."
He kicked me out on a technicality, that bastard.
Bastard. So yeah, that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. I need to book some more shows for December. The holiday schedule works out that we can continue doing our Wednesday shows all the way through the new year. If you guys do have any suggestions for people you want to talk to, please reach out. We've gotten a lot of those on Twitter recently, and the list of people I need to contact is ridiculous, but keep them coming. We love you guys for doing it. Thank you I haven't done this one in a while, to Symbolic. That's where we're broadcasting from right now. Symbolic is a design group in West Dundee, Illinois. Check them out, smbolic.com. They also put up Cusp Conference, so go back and watch some of those videos. That just happened last September. Thank you to Andrew, who helps us out. He works at Symbolic. He's the one behind DesignChat Links. I should describe what that is for people who haven't seen it before. DesignChat Links is also a Twitter account that lists all of the links that we talk about in the chat. So if you're thinking about something, you want to go back and look at it, you don't have to watch the hour-long show. Just look at that Twitter account. They're all there. That's it. Those are all the announcements. Thanks again, Jason. We will be talking to you in the near future. And actually, don't sign off. I want to talk to you more about doing your live captures. So good night, everybody.
All right. See you, everyone.